Hi, welcome to Let's Talk Careers. I'm your host, Lisa Bauman. In this episode, I'm talking with Troy Miller, CEO and co-founder of ASAP Data Solutions and chair for the board at IMA Limited. Troy's career takes him from selling coffee to taking a part-time job in a warehouse during a career change that turned into 20 years, and how connections and networking eventually led him to starting his own tech startup. I hope you enjoy. Welcome, Troy. So glad to have you here today. I'm going to get you to start by introducing yourself. Tell me a little bit about your current role and something that you're super passionate about.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks so much for having me here. Really excited. My name is Troy Miller.
Nice.
I am the current CEO and co-founder of a data software company called ASAP Data Solutions.
Nice.
Passionate. Boy, I'm passionate about so many things. I'm passionate about my family, first and foremost. I'm passionate about continuously learning.
Nice.
Evolving.
Nice.
I would say that's my big passion.
Yeah. So family, you have kiddos?
I do.
Yeah.
My lovely wife, Jessica, and two daughters, 15 and soon to be 5.
Wow. Okay. Very good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's actually dive in. I want to go kind of right to the beginning.
Okay.
And you can decide what part of the beginning you want to start at. What I'm interested to know is, what was one of your first paid jobs, either as a young person or maybe upon graduating, high school, post-secondary, anything like that?
Sure, yeah. Boy, I had a full-time job. This sounds crazy. When I was 12 years old.
Really?
At Westmount Golf Course, picking up balls on the driving range.
That's amazing. So how was that full-time? What constituted full-time then?
Yeah, so full-time I use as a relative term because at 12 years old, working 4 hours every afternoon seemed really like a full-time job. Yeah. But we did it every day throughout the summer. It was fantastic. And a good friend of my dad's was a member at the club and said, "Hey, do you think your son would be interested in this?" And I said, "Absolutely." Yeah. I had a paper out at the time, but this was really moving into a full-time professional capacity. And so I picked up balls every night, thousands of them for summers. And then I got 2 years, I picked up balls, and then I got promoted to the pro shop so I could clean golf clubs. Yeah. And then I actually spent the next 8 years at Westmount and in various capacities, pro shop, working in their curling rink. But
what were some of the things that you kind of picked up from those early experiences? Yeah,
really operating in an environment that I was unfamiliar with, the private country club environment. I had no exposure to that until this job. And so understanding, what courtesy in a professional environment, what to do, how to interact with people. At 12 years old, that's a big responsibility and something that I certainly hadn't been exposed to.
Yeah.
Wonderful upbringing with fantastic parents that exposed my sister and I to many things, but certainly not that environment. And so it was a big learning curve. Wonderful people to mentor me in that position. It sounds so crazy at 12 years old, you're being mentored in a professional environment, but we really were. And I say we because I still keep in touch with a number of the people that we picked up balls many years ago.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, so you're there for about 8 years. That takes you to what, 18?
So I'm there till
20?
Till almost 20.
Okay.
And then worked in other capacities. At that time, I attended Conestoga College for the marketing program. Wonderful course. And in the summers, I spent my time working for Versa Food Service, their Diplomat Coffee division, as a driver delivering coffee to commercial stores, hair salons, academic institutions. That was really my first summer job outside of working at Westmount.
Okay, so you're in school doing the program and you're doing this extra summer job.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what happens?
And so then the college, which had such a profound impact on me, and from an academic standpoint, obviously, but then also from a social aspect, again, learning from that environment, it was truly a community. Obviously, the college, I graduated in 93, so I started in the early 90s. The college, which was much smaller than it is today, but it's still was this wonderful community that you could learn from the people, from the professors, from the student body. And so in doing that, graduating, Versa actually offered me a full-time job to come and work for Diplomat Coffee Service as a sales representative.
Okay. Which
was my first introduction to the sales world.
Okay.
And I would suggest that I'm a salesperson to this day.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's awesome. What made you think that, okay, I'm going to do sales? This is a good idea.
You know, it was the opportunity to, and I loved delivering coffee. It was wonderful. I got to see people all day, same people, different people.
Yep.
But then in sales capacity, I got to know these people on a different level, trying to convince them to spend their money, either their own money or the corporation's money, to buy our coffee for their staff. And it was wonderful. We used to go in and bring in a coffee machine for a demo, bring in 500 cups worth of coffee and pastries and sit with them for an hour, make coffee, let them test it, keep the machine for a week. And then if they didn't like it, we would simply take it back, no cost, no obligation. I sound like I'm still in that environment today. I remember it because it was so wonderful to meet these people. I didn't convince them to buy the coffee. They liked it and they bought it. And I got great satisfaction from that.
Okay, cool. So then what happens next? You're with Versa, you're the salesperson.
Yeah. So I spent a few years doing that, had a wonderful time, great people in the office. And then one evening, just before a summer in 94, I was thinking about a career change. So, and it's a career, right? I started at 12. So at this point, I'm 20 something. So I'm a decade into my working life. And one of my friends, her father owned an industrial distribution business.
Okay.
And so they sold parts for manufacturing facilities in the area.
Okay.
And she said, my dad has an opening in the warehouse. Would you be interested in doing that for the summer?
Right.
While you figure out what it is that you want to do in your professional life. So I did. I had a place called Lou's Bearings, started in the warehouse, opening boxes with all these things that I had no idea what they were. It wasn't a small as far as the community is concerned. It was a larger business, but small as far as national businesses went or North American. And boy, did I spend a long time trying to figure out what my professional life was going to be at Lou's Bearings. Of which I spent just shy of 19 years.
You spent so hang on. A summer position turned into 19 years.
Yeah. I'm not a great decision maker
That's
or
awesome.
I need a lot of information to make a decision.
That's awesome.
But the next 19 years was working at Lou's Bearings, which was purchased by a large American organization. Based out of Birmingham, Alabama. And I was selected to be a corporate account representative for this new company. And present to large Fortune 100s, 500s, and small manufacturing facilities Canada-wide to try to help this company grow as they made their first appearance in Canada.
Okay, so just hang on just 1 second. I got to go back just a little bit. So you're the warehouse person.
Yeah.
How long did you stay in this warehouse person before you became the corporate? The account manager.
Corporate account manager.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so Lou's Bearings, let me see, it was 5 years that I worked at Lou's before they were purchased by this company called Motion Industries in various capacities. But I was only in the warehouse a little over a year in Waterloo. And then they transferred me to Cambridge to work in inside sales as well as warehouse. So that, again, there was my sales capacity again. And then an incident took place where a select group of people at Lou's Bearings left to actually start direct competitor of Lou's Bearings. This opened up a world of opportunity for somebody like me to put my hand up and say, hey, I could do sales. I can help. And so after the owners made some serious considerations, they said yes. And they brought me back to Waterloo in an outside sales capacity. And then I was released into this environment in local to Waterloo to sell bearings and power transmission related items to large manufacturers.
That's amazing. And I'm assuming you had no knowledge of any of this stuff before you jumped into it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was extremely young to be in that outside sales capacity, but I was well prepared by Lou's Bearings. And this is something that I take to this day as far as the professional world. They exposed me to every learning opportunity that was available in the industry. My first plane was when I was 20 some years old. They flew me to Dallas, Texas to go to this engineering school to learn about manufacturing equipment and how it's designed and how it's maintained and all this great stuff. And that was one of many that they sent me to manufacturer schools they held in the Toronto area. And so I had a great knowledge. I have a thirst for learning new stuff. And I retained enough of it to be dangerous enough to go and tell somebody, that is a bearing this number and we can get one for you at this price.
Yeah. All right. Would you say that through that process, because I'm trying to think about what does it take to be a good salesperson, right? And I'm wondering about, maybe somebody watching this thinking about, well, if I'm interested in sales, what have I got to do? Or if I'm interested in this type of idea, what have I got to do? And you're taking this complex pieces of information from engineering people going into machinery that you might not totally be familiar with, right? But you got to be able to translate that to a place where somebody can understand. Would that be a good way of kind of describing what you're able to do?
Yeah, for sure. For me, it was all about being resourceful. And I think being resourceful is an important skill set in any profession, in any capacity, because I didn't know what these parts were. I didn't know I understood their purpose in a piece of manufacturing equipment, but I was in no position to re-engineer it. Right. I mean, heaven forbid something would have suffered catastrophic failure in a facility. Campbell Soup in Listowel at the time was one of my largest customers. Yeah. I could shut down an entire soup line if I just made some kind of recommendation that was wrong. So being resourceful was relying on all the people at the office, relying on the manufacturer's knowledge themselves, but having that ability to pull all those pieces together and present it to the customer and say, these people are going to find out exactly what you need. Yeah. And when we find out what you need, then I'm going to be able to sell it to you, provide it to you. I think that's important. I never try to sell somebody something. Right. I sell them, I offer them what they need. Right. Not necessarily what they want. Right. Which I actually got that from a IMA, which is a significant part of my life. That's the data company prior to ASAP, my current company. Okay. Of which I'm currently the chair of the board of directors for that company. Yeah. When I originally met the founder, when he was telling me about his services, he said, we sell people what they need, not what they want. Right. Because what they want could be 5 times more expensive than what they actually need. Right. Sell them what they need. Right. The want will come. Yeah. And I think that's important for salespeople to understand. Right. It's not about selling somebody the maximum that they can afford or can afford. Right. Sell them what they actually need. Yeah. And then work into what they want. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. That kind of, believe it or not, that kind of segues for me about salary negotiations. So. Oh yeah, interesting. Right? Are we negotiating my salary today? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not in a position to do so. You got to start with the right decision maker. Yeah, that's my start. Boy, isn't that true? But it's kind of a similar idea. It's fresh in my mind because we just did a lesson, right? Was talking around how do you do that salary negotiation, right? And I start with, well, what is the market going to bear, right? And then you go in and you start showing your worth, and then you can negotiate a little bit further from there, right? That's just a brief sort of segue. But let's go from the company that you're currently at in our story here. Right. Where did you go from next? Where did you go next? Yeah, so from that outside sales capacity, one of the owners of Loose Bearings presented me to this new company to say he called me a kid, and that's okay because I was super young. But he said this kid he likes to do presentations. So I was doing PowerPoint presentations at the time for Loose Bearings. So I met with the president for Motion Canada, wonderful gentleman, Jim Clark, taught me so much in my career. And he chose me to be that guy. And I didn't know what that guy meant. But so I ended up in Birmingham, Alabama with a group of very friendly, educated, smart professionals that taught me this is what you need to do, because I was selling the entire organization. I was no longer selling a bearing or a sprocket. I was selling the concept of this is what we can do as a preferred supplier. And so I spent a lot of time in Birmingham, Alabama, learning that to bring it back to Canada and then start selling that with a good friend of mine, Michel Prou, from Montreal. And so the two of us went on this adventure selling to large manufacturing facilities. Okay. So what happens from there? So
the company gets bought. You're in this new company.
Yeah. So now I'm working out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Yep.
My mom called me Victor Newman. If anybody, I'm aging myself from a TV show called Young and the Restless. And Victor Newman was always on private planes. And I had the opportunity to fly in private planes. So that's when my mom I'm not sure she fully understood what it was that I did.
She just liked the idea of a private plane.
She really liked that, yeah. And it was so interesting, having not been on a flight until I was 20 something.
Right.
And then so from there, I worked out of Birmingham frequently.
Okay.
I was flying 50 to 100 planes a year, many, many hotel rooms, visiting these wonderful people. Our territory got expanded. And so now we were responsible for industry segments. Mine was food and beverage, and that was on a North American basis. And so now I started traveling North America, seeing every province and I think it was 46 states in the United States. Yeah, meeting wonderful people and learning what to do and what not to do in a professional capacity. Still, same as I did at 12, picking up golf balls. And working with these large companies, signing these wonderful contracts. And it was a great career, a great job, and with wonderful people. I learned something new all the day, which again is always my theme, right? Constantly evolve, be flexible, be adaptable. That's any advice that I would give to somebody that's entering their career. You may think you're going to do this for the rest of your life, but a great opportunity presents itself that you never thought was possible. Maybe you want to take it. Be adaptable, be flexible, evolve into that position. And so from there, I came back to Ontario after a lot of flights for a lot of years, and worked at a hydraulic and pneumatic shop for the same company, which is an environment I've never been exposed to. But again, it was all about the people. Great people. I didn't know what to do, and I was the manager. So they told me what I should be doing and how we could make it better. And we did that. We were extremely successful as a result of them and their vision. I adopted their vision, and what a wonderful vision it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where did you go from there?
So then I get a call from a competitor. Now you can imagine I'm pushing 20 years in that industry with the same company.
Yep.
And a competitor calls and says, hey, we're starting this new thing in Ontario. We would love for you to come and work with us.
Okay.
Of which I said, absolutely not. I can't. I'm so loyal to this company. How could I go somewhere else?
All right.
And so this gentleman, Russell Grant, and we're friends to this day. He had a compelling speech for me.
Okay.
So we met and we talked through it, and I made the decision to leave and try this new company, and which was a company called Wajax. Is a very successful company to this day in Canada.
Yep. What do they do? Is it the same product?
So they have various divisions, but this one was their industrial distribution side.
Okay.
Yeah. Very much like a family. As large as it is, it was run like a family business. Every branch was a family. Every region was a family. And so I did that for just shy of 2 years.
Okay.
Had this great opportunity. A president in Canada of Wajax and a president in the United States of another company decided they were looking for some kind of alliance, so that they could compete against across North America, rather than their individual country geographic footprint. And so they said, "Would you be interested in doing this?" And so one of their representatives of mine, and myself, took on this responsibility of somehow merging these two companies without actually financially merging the two companies legally. It was interesting.
I'll bet.
And we're about to go to market, and the founder of IMA, Jim Calvert, calls and says, "Hey, we'd love for you to come and work with us."
Right.
I knew them from my motion days.
Okay.
And so I said, absolutely not. This is wonderful. I'm having so much fun doing this.
Right.
And so again, I give into very compelling sales pitches.
Okay.
And so I said, yes.
Okay.
And so I went and joined IMA, this data company.
Okay.
Not a technical person I was going to say, this education.
Is kind of a switch, isn't it? So now you're going from a tangible, touchable, feelable product.
Exactly.
To this IMA. What does IMA stand for?
So inventory management and analysis is the original, it's the acronym for IMA.
Yeah.
When the company first started, they would go into manufacturers' storerooms and they would identify all the parts that they had in the storeroom. So that was the inventory management side of it.
Sure. Yeah.
And then the company is 35 years old.
Yeah.
They were in the data space before data was cool.
Right.
Which, by the way, I think data is very cool.
Data is cool.
Yeah, data is super cool. And so
I agree, actually. Yeah.
And so this is when they would return the files back to their customers would say, "This is wonderful, but when you do this, can you make sure this looks the same? So all these parts are the same. They have the same manufacturer name. Can you make sure the manufacturer name looks the same?" And the founders were intelligent and had the foresight to say, that's going to be a big service. Right. And so they switched, they pivoted at that point to say, data is the way of the future. We're going to focus on data. And so what do they do today? And been doing the same thing now for 32 years of the 35, which is normalizing poor quality data to some kind of schema or taxonomy. That's the technical summary of it. We take bad data that looks crappy and we make it look really, really good so people can action on it. Right. Yeah. For manufacturing facilities all across the world, Fortune 100s, many Fortune 500s, and then small individual manufacturing sites that are as or more important than the big people that we.
So what would you say would be the thing that this other company wanted you? Was it because you had all this industry knowledge? Is that would be the reason?
Yeah. So the founders were leaving the business, and their daughter, Charlene Freeman, who's our president and CEO of IMA today, wonderful individual, great work ethic that the team recognizes, and as a result of that strives to achieve that same level of work ethic. She's an incredible leader. But she was taking over the business, and she had acquired the business from her parents. But her father was the revenue generation side of the business, of which she didn't understand. I'm sorry, it's not that she didn't understand it. She had just had no experience in that rev gen side of the business. And so the idea was that I would join and I would work in that sales and marketing capacity while she continued to run, the data and operations side of the business. And it's been a wonderful relationship. So you're still there? So I'm the chair of the board of directors for that company. Just recently moved into that capacity so that we could start the new company, which was a bit of a challenge. 12 years at IMA. It's we're approximately 30 employees, very much family type driven business, and moving away from it in a full-time capacity was a bit of a challenge. Yeah. Still is to this day. Right.
So you moved from a sort of formalized position into the board of directors, and then you started your business.
That's correct.
Is that how that worked? Okay. Yeah. So talk about the decision to do that. What was the decision to say, okay, I'm going to do this myself? That must have been a pretty big decision.
It was a huge decision. Yeah. It really was. And Charlene is actually one of my partners at the new startup. And so the decision really was, it's a similar industry, but offering a very different service. The world's largest ERP or software company is SAP. Yes. And so SAP has a significant amount of data, as you can appreciate, of which our type of data requires the services that IMA provides, but then it also requires a service that's embedded right into their technology, which the IMA service is not. And we found as a result of SAP and their users needing that type of service, that we weren't getting as many opportunities at IMA. We're growing significantly every year, but not necessarily in this particular space. And so the idea was, how are we going to capture more business from that, of which the service didn't necessarily match with IMA. Right. So we made a difficult decision to start a new company. The best decision we made to capture that business. And the market's concern was, well, you're going to cannibalize your existing business because you're doing similar things. Right. Well, we're not. This is a tech play, a full tech play, living within the SAP environment, capturing or providing a need to those SAP users that that
Neither of them.
isn't a service we provided at IMA.
Right. And so SAP doesn't do this either.
They don't.
Right.
No.
Okay, so that's really interesting. So instead of saying, look, I'm going to go against this gigantic company and become a competitor, you're like, here's a place in the market that there's a need. I'm going to fill it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And our CTO, Matt Kretsch, he's one of the smartest, if not the smartest tech mind that I've worked with. And he recognized there was an opportunity to build a technology that could live in the SAP environment.
Right.
And then this little thing called AI.
I was just about to go there. I was like, holy cow. Okay, so how does AI disrupt potentially what you're doing?
And every business pivots or should pivot, right?
Yes.
Or needs to, again, evolve.
Yep.
This is a tech startup that a few months in is we need to pivot, and we need to pivot fast because it wasn't, we need to embed AI into our technology, which we have, but it was more so to best understand what is it that the AI can do. How much of a threat is our business and our service that we're developing in very early stages? How much of a threat is it that somebody's going to leverage an AI and just replace us?
Yeah. So how did you figure that out? Because that's like a super deep question.
It is a super deep question. And every day we are learning about AI.
Yeah.
And obviously it's the talk of most conversations, certainly in business. And right now, CEOs and CTOs and CIOs and COOs of the world are trying to figure out how do we incorporate AI into our business, into our solution. And some are doing so unnecessarily, but they feel it's a need. Maybe they have to report to their board or to the shareholders or to their team. Hey, we're leveraging AI. And there's certainly a place for it in most businesses, but we didn't understand where that was in our business. So it was months of learning the AI, learning what is available, what is not available. If we were to make a model of our own, how do we do so? And I know more about vector embedding and clustering and visualizations of AI than I ever thought I would. I'm a mechanical guy. And so then we found a way that we could actually integrate it into our technology, but it was certainly not going to replace our technology. And that was our main goal when we went on our AI research.
Journey, yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess I want to ask a question. It could be a trade secret question though.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
How did you do that? Like what did you end up doing? How do you take an existing set of systems, right? Based filling a need, creating a structure, and then embed this AI thing into it that, by the way, is also going to continue to evolve.
Absolutely. Yeah. We talked about evolution the whole time. It evolves every day. And so, we worked with a data scientist who specialized in AI and ML from Florida State, actually. And so he was able to offer us insight to the AI to say, look for this, try this. Is it doing this? Can it do this? And so it's hours and hours of research and reading and testing using the AI, trying to modify it specifically for our need and see, is it successful or is it not? Hallucination is a big term that you hear a lot in AI. We can't afford any type of hallucination in the manufacturing world. It goes back to me as a young salesperson telling Campbell Soup, just put this bearing on, it'll be fine. If the AI does the same thing for our customers' data, then it very much could cause catastrophic failure or worse. Yeah. So we can't afford for it to hallucinate.
Right.
And so the creative aspect of it, we almost temperature related, we turned it to zero because we don't want it to be creative. This isn't me creating a book to read to my 5-year-old. This is making sure manufacturing facilities get the best part for the best in the right application. Yeah. And so testing. Yeah. And reading.
So your data scientist gave you some really good questions to think about as far as integrating, AI and these systems together.
Right.
If you were to kind of go back and take a step back and say, okay, some of these questions could potentially be useful in other areas, maybe as you navigate your career or different things like that.
For sure.
What would be some of the questions look like?
Yeah,
it prompted you on.
If I go back to the being resourceful, which I would say is one of my best skill sets, because I don't pretend to know everything. I certainly don't know everything, but I rely on the great people that do. This is a situation of us being resourceful. We don't know necessarily. And so we know the premise of it, but how do we find out the specifics? We reach out to a resource that does know. Right. And so some of the questions that we reviewed were, what do you want it to do?
Right.
And then find out if it can do it.
Yeah.
That's a profound question. What do you want it to do?
Yeah.
Ask yourself that if you're looking for your own career advice. What do I want to do?
What do you want? Yeah, exactly.
Right. If you're in a situation where you're negotiating something with a customer, like, what do they want? But what do I want out of this contract? And so that question, as simple as it may be, it causes us to take a step back and say, what do we want it to do? It's unfair or too profound for us to say, well, we just want it to do everything that we're going to develop in our new technology. That's a great answer. Right. It's unrealistic. Right. So now define that on a more granular basis. Right. What do we want it to do? And can it do that? If it can, fantastic. Yeah. But where it can't, that's good too. Because if it can do all of those things, then somebody else can jump in that market. There is no barrier to entry if it can do it all. Yeah. And so that was the big thing. What do you want it to do? And out of the 20 things that we wanted it to do, it did 1.5 well.
Okay.
I always have this scale of good, better, best.
Right.
That's kind of, I rate everything on good, better, best.
Yeah.
When we started, I had to add a category of good enough.
Good. Yes.
Right. Because good enough was okay in this place. It allowed us to get to market, which is important.
Nice.
Right?
I'm a big fan of good enough.
Good enough.
I'm a big fan of good enough.
Absolutely.
Huge fan.
Nothing wrong with good enough. It's good enough.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I'm a little bit of a recovering perfectionist. So, but I also learned that good enough gives you places to go from there. Right?
Absolutely.
You know, you have an opportunity to reiterate. Anyways, that was a segue. So this gives me an interesting perspective on the whole piece around AI, right? Because AI, you know, people are like, it's going to take over the world and do my job. And I'm like, I really don't think that it is personally, but, you know, intuitively. And I have not dived into the subject of AI as much as you have. In fact, I've dived into it maybe 1%.
Right.
Okay. I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
But, you know, some of the parts of your conversation is giving me clues that perhaps it can't do all the 1,000,001 things that we are dreaming of it to do.
Yeah, for sure.
What would you say might be some of the limitations that it has?
You know, I think it's there's this narrative around AI is going to take over the world, right? And it's certainly going to replace everyone's jobs. It's the Luddites in the 1800s, right? All of a sudden there's a loom created and it's like, oh my goodness, now everybody in the world is going to be out of work.
Yeah.
It's not the case.
Yeah.
You know, I'll be completely honest and say there are some jobs that could potentially be threatened by AI.
Yeah. Lamplighters in England were replaced by electricians. So,
exactly right. Somebody once asked Henry Ford, you know, why didn't you ask your customers what they wanted before you built the vehicle? And his answer was, because if I asked them, they would have said a faster horse. And so, is AI going to do some of the mundane tasks that we as humans do today? Absolutely. I hope it does. I really do, because that's going to allow us as humans to do what we do best, which is be creative. Let's not lose that creativity. The AI is really good at regurgitating. It's the best at remembering everything that it sees and everything that it learns. But is it creative? I would challenge that, because I think it's not uniquely creative. It's creative because it assembles things, but it's not uniquely creative. That's our job as humans. Yeah. I mean, if you were to ask me what does the future look like as far as AI being involved in the workplace, I hope AI again does a great job of those menial, mundane tasks and allows us to be more creative. So we're not eliminating jobs. We're just redirecting those hours to something that's more creative. And by doing so, I'm going to throw this dream out there. Maybe we get to 25 or 30-hour work weeks. Companies are as profitable, as efficient, as competitive globally. AI is doing a bunch of these tasks, which allows us to reduce our work required by 20% a week, which allows us to have better life-work balance, spend more time with your family.
Yeah. I'd also suggest that It's the mundane tasks that I need to do in my regular work that gives me the most amount of stress.
Absolutely.
So there's that,
sure.
right? I'd also argue that AI is not going to be able to build relationships, right?
Right.
Even in this conversation, we're having a chance to build a bit of a relationship by connecting on these different pieces. And I don't think that AI is going to be able to do that.
I agree.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And who knows what the future holds? This is one, humble person's opinion. But boy, if we can reduce that work week and again, have better work-life balance, you talk about stress, let's eliminate that stress. If you have to work 25 hours a week instead of 40, hopefully you're going to be less stressed.
Have more time for my kiddos.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So let's dive a little bit into, your companies and your industries. And I'm going to assume that you hire folks.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about what you're looking for when you hire people.
Yeah. Number one, cultural fit.
Okay. What does that mean?
And so somebody that, and it's so hard in an interview, right?
Yeah.
I'm not a traditional interviewer.
Okay.
When we're hiring for marketing position, if you're a vehicle, what type of vehicle? I want to understand the individual. What do they like in a professional environment, right? What motivates them to get up and go to work in the morning because they want to and not because they're seeking a paycheck? And so I would suggest it's more difficult to understand if somebody's going to be a fit in your company's culture than it is their professional skill set. Hopefully you can get that from understanding their education, having conversations with them about, the subject matter of whatever your industry is, but understanding that cultural fit, understanding what do they do recreationally, right? And again, focusing on that fact for me as always, what do you like about a job that you've had in the past?
Okay.
What was it that made you really like that job?
Yeah. So you would ask these types of questions. These
Absolutely.
are the kind of questions that you'd be asking.
Yeah.
Yeah. In an interview process.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because cultural fit, if somebody fits into the culture and you feel like a team member or part of the family of an organization, then if you have concerns, you're more apt to say, hey, listen, this isn't working for me. Can somebody help me out? Can I go into a different capacity? Can we modify my current capacity so I don't have to do this because I don't understand it? I don't like it, whatever the case may be. Right. But then also too, if somebody else is struggling, they're more willing to say, I need help over here. Right. Who's done this before? Oh, I have. Fantastic. Get those two together, have them collaborate and have them both succeed as a result of that collaboration. Yeah. Having that type of open environment, and it sounds like everybody says exactly the same thing, and maybe they do because it's paramount for an organization to be successful.
Okay, so how do you, let's say a candidate comes in and they're talking and they're answering all these things, and they say the right types of questions or the right type of things. They talk about their passions and those types of things. They get into the work. And they don't quite sort of line up with what they talked about in that interview.
Sure.
How do you kind of either prevent that or suss it out or?
Yeah, I mean, there's this 60. There's a great book called First 90 Days, I believe it is, and it talks about, are you a fit for an organization, and is the organization a fit for you during your first 90 days? Yeah. There's got to be open communication, complete transparency. If somebody is not working out, it's important to talk to them and say, how do you feel? Yeah. Do you feel this is a job that you could do for the next 5, 10, 50 years? Yeah. And if not, why? Because you obviously like the individual based on the interviewing process. Maybe could you redeploy them and put them in a position somewhere else in the organization? Is it the job itself? I think that open communication and transparency with new employees is imperative. And I think all too often I've seen in organizations, they wait for the 60-day probation period or 90-day and then sit down and say, hey, it's not working. Right. If you see it day 7, say it day 7.
Early conversations. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. So what would you offer some advice for students? Let's say students are kind of thinking about going into a similar field as you, or even thinking about, becoming a salesperson as a career. What would you say? Yeah.
Be open to opportunities that maybe you didn't see as your primary vision goal. your own, if you were to establish your own opportunities, what did it look like? And something very different comes along. Be open to that. I could relate that back to our last topic around the hiring process. There's a good friend of mine, Rob Hoffer, who is the VP of sales for IMA. And I worked with him at WageX, and he came in, and we interviewed 8 people that day, which I would never suggest, but we interviewed 8 people. And the branch manager was doing a great job of asking the questions that HR wanted to have answered. And the last guy was this big jovial guy that came in. He had no industry experience. He didn't know a bearing from a sprocket. And he sat down, and I was reading his resume. Again, this is the 8th interview in a day. And I'm reading the resume, and I see one of his experiences was the manager for the Hard Rock Cafe in Amsterdam.
Okay.
And so that's all I could focus on. Yeah. And so after all the HR questions were asked, I said, look, I got one question for you. Yeah. I want you to spend the next 5 minutes telling me about this job in Amsterdam. Mm-hmm. And he laughed because it had nothing to do with the industry. Rob had no forethought that he was going to end up as an industrial salesperson. Right. But when he came in and interviewed, and we had this great connection, A, I knew it was a cultural fit. And B, I knew this is an individual that wants to learn. They're open. He's got a master's in hospitality from a school in Switzerland. Right. And so he was able to equate those skill sets to a job that he never thought that he would be doing. It's been 14 years that Rob and I have been working together, and he's one of the best that I've ever seen. That's
amazing.
Yeah. So be willing to look outside of whatever fits in your job box. Yep. And something falls outside of that box. Yeah. Give it a chance.
Yeah. Yeah. When I think a little bit about, when I reflect on your story there, I think about that opportunity where, it was like, I want to leave what I'm doing. Why not just try this warehouse? Right. Nothing related to what you do.
Absolutely.
Right. But there was that level of risk that you were willing to take to say, okay, this is a stopgap between here and the next thing.
For sure.
Which turned into the thing.
Yeah. And still to this day, I'm still in that same industry from 1994 to today.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing. So what gives you hope for the future?
I mean, my children. Yeah. They're my everything. That's for sure. My wife and my kids are my everything. And with a 10-year age gap between them, they're at very different times in their life. Yeah. They're growing up in an age of AI and technology, which is important that we all manage device time, and, especially in children. Don't let your kids under 2 watch TV. That was my quick pitch for my wife, who's PhD in developmental psychology. And so, and to see my future is that my 2 daughters are happy, right? And that they try things that maybe they didn't think that they were going to fit in personally and professionally, and that they continue to evolve. I think that's all I can hope for the future, is that they're happy, they're healthy, and they end up doing something that they love.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's all personal on that level for me.
For
on the professional side, let's, again, I've already stated this. Let's let AI do some of those tasks that causes the stress that seem mundane and trivial.
Yep.
And let's get to shorter work weeks.
Yeah.
So that we can all enjoy more of each other and our family and all those people that truly make us happy at the end of the day.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming in today.
It was my pleasure.
Yeah.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a very interesting career journey.
Yeah, it has been. It's not over yet.
That's cool.
We'll see what the next couple of decades bring.
That reminds me, what is next for you?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, with the new tech startup, I look forward to it getting full adoption globally, and then doing something similar, a new service at ASAP, the existing company, or doing a new company. Our office is based out of a place called Catalyst Commons here in Kitchener. Yep. It's a wonderful environment for startups to the fully established Toyotas of the world in the building. And it's so energizing to see people in various capacities in organizations in different parts of their life cycle.
Yeah.
Collaborate on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And I love that collaboration with people in similar positions, different industries.
Yeah.
So I see myself, based on the success of ASAP and how long that takes us to get where we want to be, potentially doing something else here in the community.
Cool. Wow, what a great conversation. Thank you for listening to this episode of Let's Talk Careers. If you liked this episode and want to hear more, follow us on Spotify and subscribe on YouTube. See you in the next one.